A big part of being a developer is being able to use the terminal or the command line. Well, what is it? In this video, we're going to tackle this question and teach you a couple of very useful commands. Now, on a Mac, you simply do command space and type in terminal, press enter, and then the terminal will open for you. It's one of your applications and it's on every computer. If you're on a Windows machine, then it is the command prompt. And I'll leave instructions at the end of this video of how you can access them, but you might remember this from the traceroute video earlier on in the course. But what is it? Well, it's how humans originally communicated with computers. Up until the 1980s, it was the main way humans gave instructions to computers and computers gave output to the humans. We didn't have something called the GUI or the graphical user interface, such as me opening up a new folder and changing the name of this folder or opening up Google Chrome. I don't really need to know how this is done behind the scenes. I just click on an icon and it opens it up magically for me. But command lines are really useful because you can do the exact same thing that you do visually on a graphical user interface, like I have here, on the command line. But they tend to be much faster to do, as I'm going to show you in this video. And there are also common ways to access different computers around the world. Like if you needed to access a server in another country where your web app is hosted, well, you would use the command line. And I'll show you how to do that later on in the course. Now, in your day-to-day job, you'll be using the terminal a lot because you'll have to access servers, the database, your front-end application, but you can do all of that in one from the terminal. You can also download scripts that other people have written from the internet so you can use in your projects. Now, these are all things I'm going to show you in the later sections. The commands that I'm about to show you work on a Mac or a Linux. For Windows, I'll have the Windows version command at the bottom of the video as we progress. Most of them are the same, but there are a few differences. So let's get started. The first command I'm going to show you is the ls command. I simply type in and press enter, and it lists everything that is in my current directory. What is my current directory? Well, I do pwd for present working directory, and I see that I'm in the users. That's my username. So I'm in my username folder, and these are all the things available to me. If I do cd, then I can go into this. If I wanted to go to, let's say, desktop, I do cd desktop. And now, if I do ls, I see that I have untitled folder because that's the only thing on my desktop right now. I can also do cd ... and this brings me back to one directory up. I can also do clear to clear up my terminal and have a nice fresh slate. There's a short command cd/, and this takes me to the root directory. If I do ls, I see that I have applications, library, system, users. That's the root directory of my Mac, essentially my Macintosh HD. I can also do cd squiggly line, and this takes me to the user directory. Let's clear this again. And if we check where we are, all right, let's change this untitled folder to something like test. Okay, let's say I'm in the user directory right now. I wanted to access desktop and then the test folder. I would simply do cd desktop and then test. And now I'm in the test folder, but there's nothing in there. So one thing we can do is I can say open dot, and it opens the folder that we're currently in. Okay, we're in the test folder. Now, if I just put this to the side over here so you can see, I can say make directory, which is make a folder, name. So name here will be whatever I want the folder to be titled. Let's just say this folder would be called web app. Did you see that? Now web app shows up in my folder. Let's change the view here so you can see it better. There you go. If I do ls now, I see that we have the web app folder. And as we know, we can go into it. And let's double click here to see what we have. We have absolutely nothing. Well, we can create a file in here by saying touch and the name of the file. So let's just do index.html. There you go, index.html. Now, what if we wanted to open this index.html? Again, we just do open, and the dot means we open the folder we're currently in, which is here. But if I do open index.html, it opens the file for us. How cool is that? But index.html is pretty empty right now. Wouldn't it be nice if we can open Sublime Text from here and add something? Again, you can do that with open. You put in A, so line A for application, and the name of the application. So Sublime Text. Close the double quotes, press enter, and look at that. I have Sublime Text. But if we wanted to do application Sublime Text and open the index.html file, we just do this. And now I can say HTML, and we'll just say, hello world. Save that. And if I do open index.html, we have our index.html file loaded. Wasn't that a lot faster than right-clicking, creating a folder, then dragging everything to Sublime Text? And as you can see, you can do things really, really fast here. Okay, let's change something. I'm going to close Google Chrome and Sublime. And in the web app, let's say I wanted to change the name of index.html to about.html. Well, I'll do the mv command, which stands for move, but it just moves the index.html file to about.html file. So it's a little trick. You're essentially just moving one file to another, but by changing the name, you create a new file and you replace it with the old one. So now I have about.html. Very cool. Now, these commands, typing them can get pretty tiring. I can press the up arrow and it goes through my entire history, which is very cool. I can also press the tab key and it will bring up my most recent command or completes what I'm about to write. So you can do it really, really fast. And when your commands get longer and longer, it's a very useful thing to do. Okay, I don't really need the about.html file anymore. Let's remove it. We do rm for remove and the name of the file, about.html. It's been removed. Perfect. Now, what about the web app file? We can remove that as well, but if I just do remove web app, well, it's not going to work. First of all, if I do ls or present working directory, I'm in the web app folder, so I need to move back to the test folder. Let's clear here, do cd. Now my present working directory is, I'm in the test, so I can remove web app by doing remove web app. But rm only works for files. To remove a directory, a folder, you need to do rm and then use the R option and then the folder name. In our case, it's the web app. There you go. It's gone. And with that, you know what? We can remove the test folder as well. We can go back to our desktop and then do remove our test. There you go. It's gone. And one last trick. On a Mac, you can do this.
This is so cool.
Right? Very, very cool. Okay. As you can see, you can have a lot of power with the terminal, and I want you to get used to writing commands on here. And from now on, try creating files and folders this way. Eventually, you'll get more and more comfortable with it, and things will be much faster than just using the GUI. In the developer environment section, I'll show you how you can change this boring black and white terminal to something like this. That's it for now.
See you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Welcome back. Let's expand on our node knowledge from previous video and actually create a script file that we can run. Let's just do the touch command here again to create a file, and we'll just call it script.js. You'll see over here on the left-hand side that I have script.js in my node folder. Now within this folder, I can now do anything in JavaScript. I can say const a equals 5. Oh, and that's not the folder that I want. We want to open this, and we'll say const a equals 4, const b equals 5, and then we can just console.log a plus b. If I save this, in order to run the script, all I do is node and then the script name, script.js, and because we're in the directory, it'll know what script.js is, and it'll give us 9. How cool is that? Now, you also see that it exited. It didn't stay in the program. And that is because at the end of the file, once it reads everything and executes it, so the last thing it executes is console.log, it runs process.exit and exits out of the file. Let me show you something. If I did something called a set timeout, which we actually have in Node, if I do node global.set timeout, I get a function. Okay, so if I do set timeout, I can run a function, again using our arrow functions, and within here I can do console log. And set timeout is cool because it allows you to say, hey, when do you want this to be executed? And that's the second parameter, and I'll say 3 seconds. So if I save and I do node script.js, 1, 2, 3, and there you go, 9. And then process exits. Node is smart enough to run through this, and once this is done, ends the process and comes back to the terminal. Very cool. And again, within Node, we can actually use things that might be useful for us based on what global objects we have. For example, one of the most popular ones are __ dir name. If I save this and run node script.js, I get my directory, node. And I'll show you why that's useful when we start building a server. But as you can see, we have the power of the browser and running the scripts that we want right here in our terminal. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Now going back to my example here, let's add a new file and we'll call this script2.js. Now the script2.js can have a constant called large number, and let's just say that's 356. And if we want to export this and say export default large number, and now within script.js I do import large number from script2.js. Let's make this a little bit smaller. And now I change this to large number, and let's just do a plus b. If I run node script.js, I get an error, unexpected token import. And that is because Node has yet to implement the new ES6 feature of import statements. And there are ways around it, and you can add packages in order to allow you to do this. But I'm going to show you the common JS way because most servers that you'll encounter will have the common JS way. And over the years, this and this will become more prevalent, but you already know how to do this from the front end section. So nothing is different here. In order for you to get familiarized with common JS, we're going to use the require form. So how can we do this using the way it works in Node 8.9, which is the version that we have. Well, we'll have to do a const large number equals require. Again, this might be familiar. And then within here, we have to give it the file path. With require, we now have large number. And we also want to export it now. And the way exports work with CommonJS is you do module.export. And that is because, let me just clear this and show you. If I do node and I do module, you see that module is a global object that we have access to. And using module.exports, I can say what objects I want to export in this file. In our case, it will be large number. If I save this and now run our node script, I've got to exit the process first. Let me clear. If I run node script.js, I get object 5. Why is that? Well, because now we've exported this object. And the way we want to access it here, we're exporting a global object, which we can name whatever. In our case, we can say script2. And in order to get the property of script2, well, we'll say script2.largeNumber. And now if I run this, I get 361. And this can be named anything. It's just a variable that you're declaring. So we can just call it C large number, and it still works. It's a bit of a different style than we used to on the front end. And that's only because we haven't implemented Node hasn't implemented the import and export with this version of it. But it will come eventually. Just don't get scared if you see it this way. Once you get used to the syntax, it's pretty much the same. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
I've got some exciting news for you. And no, the exciting news isn't that I'm now using VS Code instead of Sublime Text. I still love my Sublime Text code editor, but just to change things up, I'm going to use VS Code for now, and I'm going to talk about ES6 modules in Node. You see, up until now, we had to use the require syntax, which is what we call the common JS syntax with Node. Originally, Node was created with this syntax in mind because JavaScript wasn't created with modules in mind. They never had the import-export syntax that we had with ES6. So because Node was created before we even had that, they had to create their own module system, which is how we got require and this common JS syntax. But as of Node version 12, they now have ES6 style module imports and exports. So the good news is that if you're watching this video and you have the latest version of Node, then congratulations, you can now start to change from require to using import-export keywords. So let me show you, based on what we've just done and what we've learned about modules, how we can convert this to ES6. So the first thing we can do with script2.js is to, well, actually you can remove this entire thing. And we can just simply say export const large number. So now this gets exported. So I can save that. Next, in here, instead of the require syntax, let's comment that out and let's say import. And in here, we'll import, doing destructuring, the large number that we exported. So remember, we did export large number, and we're going to say from script2.js, grab large number. So this object destructuring simply says out of the script2 object that we're going to import, just grab the property large number. So I can say from, and in here, dot script2 package.js. So now that I've imported large number and I did object destructuring, I don't need to call script2.largeNumber. Instead, I can just simply do large number. So will this work? Well, let's test it out. I'm going to open up the terminal here. And in here, I got to make sure I'm in the right folder. So I should cd into the ES6 folder. And in here, I have the script and script2.js. Now, if I do this, do you think it will work? Well, the first thing I want to do is check my node version. So if I do node-v, and you should do the same, what's the number that you get? In here, I see that I have a pretty high node version. As a matter of fact, it's higher than version 12. And if you remember, with version 12, we got ES6 imports. So this should work, right? Well, let's test it out. I'm going to say node script.js. Oh, syntax error. Cannot use import statement outside a module. Why is that? I mean, I have the right version. Luckily, Node gives us some hints. Warning. To load an ES6 module, set type module in package.json or use the MJS extension. And this is a little gotcha. Because Node was created with this common JS import-export in mind, we need to actually specify how we want Node to read these files so we know that we're using the ES6 syntax. Because remember, it's different from a browser. So we have two options here. And I also want to show you how you can find this out on the documentation website for Node. Usually what you would do is Google ECMAScript 6 Node.js. You'll probably get to the Node.js documentation. And we can see here we have modules, ECMAScript modules. And let's go to enabling. And if we click on enabling, we see over here, all right, there you go. We need to add the MJS file extension. Inside of package.json, we have to update the type field. So if I click on the type field, I'll read about it here and I say, oh, import statements of JS files are treated as ES modules if the nearest parent package.json contains type module. So this is a good way to learn how to read the documentation. Remember, the answer is probably always inside of the documentation. So let's follow their advice. What if I rename these to MJS and this to, if I now run this, do you think this will work? Actually, I have to fix one more thing, right? I have to make sure that the syntax while we're importing is MJS. For fun, let's see if I can do it without the file extension. Let's save here and run this. Cannot find module. So we actually have to specify the file extension. And if I run this again, hey, check that out. Everything works. Our ES6 imports works, and we just followed what they've recommended. Name your files MJS. But there was another option too, right? The package.json option. So let's rename this back to .js. Some people really don't like the syntax MJS, and they prefer this method instead. So again, what we'll do is we'll run this again and make sure we change this to .js, back to .js. And if we run our code, it'll give us an error because, again, we have to add type module inside of package.json. We don't really have package.json, right? But we can just run the command npm init and then -y to say yes to all the options to simply create our package.json file. There you go. So in here, all we need to do is just simply inside of package.json, wherever we want, add type module so that it reads the package.json and says, oh yeah, they're going to be using ES6 modules. So if I save this and now go back and run my code, look at that. It all works. How cool is that? Now go ahead and play around with ES6 modules. As you start working with more and more Node.js code, you're going to see more import statements than require statements like we have before. However, because a lot of code bases still use the require syntax, if you go on npm, for example, and try to download packages, a lot of them still suggest that you use the require syntax. And that is because you're not sure that everybody has the latest version of Node. Some people might be running a Node version that is lower than version 12. In that case, the code isn't going to work. And that's why for the rest of the course, and even for the final Smart Brain project, I've left our Node files with the require syntax so that anybody, any student taking this course can run those without any errors. But feel free to update them if you ever want with ES6 imports. But for now, it's always a good idea to keep the CommonJS syntax to make sure that if your code is being run on different systems and you don't have control over the Node version, well, then you can make sure that the require syntax is going to work for everybody. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Welcome back. In this video, I want to talk about the 3 kinds of modules that you can have in Node. We've seen that we have this type, which we already know about, which is a module that you create yourself, like script2, and has its module exports, and you give it the path to the file so you can find it. There's also something called built-in modules. And built-in modules are modules that come already pre-installed with Node. For example, one of the more popular ones is the FS module. And this module, if I console log, is a module with a whole bunch of things, once again, but it allows you to read the file system. That is, if you had a text file and you wanted to read through the text file and extract out how many times the word hello was said, well, you can write that by simply using the file system module and using something like read file or read file sync, which will output, if you do something like read file, it will output the contents of the file, and then you can do whatever you want with it. Another popular one is the HTTP module, which, as you can guess, is the module that we'll use later on to build a server. And you can read up on all these modules, but those 2 are probably the most popular. In our case, as web developers, we're really concerned with the HTTP one. These modules are without the path. They're just simply exactly like that. And then finally, the 3rd type of module, again, the one that we know, is something from npm, a package. And one of my favorite packages to use with Node is something called NodeMon. And NodeMon is really, really nice because, well, if I clear this and install npm install, and I'll have to do npm init first actually to make sure that I have a package.json file. And if I pass the -y, it'll just say yes to all the prompts that I get beforehand. There you go. I have my package.json. And now within this package.json, I'm going to say npm install nodemon -- save dev. If I go to package.json, I see that now I have nodemon in dev dependencies. And we haven't seen this before. Up until now, we've done either -- save or nothing at all and automatically put it in dependencies. Dev dependencies are dependencies that we only use when we're developing. When we actually release this app or this server, it won't be included because nodemon is just for, again, for our enjoyment while we're developing. Now let me show you what nodemon does. Nodemon now can be used because it's in node module, and if you go to bin, you see nodemon here. Well, because it's in the package node modules.bin, I can use the command such as start and say nodemon. And Node is smart enough to know that if I run nodemon, it's going to look in the .bin folder and find it there. If it finds it there, which it does, it will run the command. So let's see what happens. If I clear this and do npm start, I get a bit of an error because, well, we have some weird files in here. So let's just go back to our original example. Let's save, run npm start, and we have a clean exit, but you see that something is still running. If I change this now to 6 and I save, it'll watch those changes for me. It keeps listening to changes and it will output everything. Again, if I change this, so I don't have to keep running the node script.js command. Very cool. So we'll be using nodemon a lot, and it's one of my favorite things to use, again, so that I don't have to go back and forth. And if you make any mistakes, well, it will let you know right off the bat. All right, perfect. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.